Hello again from Metro Manila, the Philippines, Southeastern Asia. In this video, I still continue to discuss the possible, or some of the possible, moral and religious allusions in The Lord of the Rings. Contrast two brothers. I think you already know who I'm talking about. Faramir and Boromir. Faramir was 5 years younger than Boromir. Faramir was much more humble, much gentler, clearly kinder than Boromir. He did not love war for its own sake, while Boromir only cared for the old tales that described battles. Faramir eventually got married, and his wife was the former shield maiden of the Rohirrim, Éowyn or Éowyn. Éowyn was the one who, with Meriadoc, Brandybuck's assistants, killed the Witch King, or the chief of the 9 Nazgûl or Ringwraiths in the Battle of the Fields of Pelennor, and was almost killed herself in the process, because she was so bitter at being left behind to look after the Rohanian people that she disguised herself as a rider, and since she was a tall young woman, she was wearing a mask, she wasn't discovered, and she then took Meriadoc with her. Boromir, clearly, just like his father Denethor II, fell into the temptation of power. However, contrary to Denethor II, he in the end repented. And then, well, especially those readers of The Lord of the Rings who are professing Christians and believe in the literal passion and crucifixion, shed blood, the resurrection, and ascension of Jesus Christ, may compare the two thieves between whom Jesus was crucified at Calvary or Golgotha. One remained unrepentant, the other one repented. So Denethor, in this biblical allusion, I'm not sure if the late Professor Tolkien thought of that, could be compared with the unpenitent thief, while Boromir could be compared with a penitent thief. So Boromir and, well, of course, Faramir, just like Aragorn, could pass for a Christian hero if we wanted to biblically and in a Christian way allegorize The Lord of the Rings, which of course is dangerous since the author didn't want it to be allegorized. Boromir at first was so friendly in Parth Galen, near the Falls of Rauros. He found Frodo there thinking which course to take. I was afraid for you, Frodo. If Aragorn is right and orcs are near, then none of us should wander alone, and you least of all. So much depends on you. May I stay now and talk for a while, since I have found you? It would comfort me. Where there are so many, all speech becomes a debate without end. So he was possibly criticizing the Fellowship of the Ring, and even by extension, the Council of Elrond. Although I'm not sure how much debate there was actually in the Council of Elrond. But two together may perhaps find wisdom. Frodo at first welcomed him. You are kind, but I do not think that any speech will help me. For I know what I should do, but I'm afraid of doing it. Boromir, afraid. And then Boromir asked, are you sure that you do not suffer needlessly? You need counsel in your hard choice. Will you not take mine? And then Frodo said quite presciently, and sharply, albeit still politely. I think I know already what counsel you would give Boromir, and it would seem like wisdom but for the warning of my heart. Warning? Warning against what? Said Boromir sharply. Against delay. Against the way that seems easier. Against refusal of the burden that is laid on me. Against, well, if it must be said, against trust in the strength and truth of men. Yet that strength has long protected you far away in your little country, though you knew it not. He was referring to the Rangers or the Dunedain of the North who had ceaselessly protected the Shire. I do not doubt the valor of your people, but the world is changing. The walls of Minas Tirith may be strong, but they are not strong enough. If they fail, what then? We shall fall in battle valiantly, yet there is still hope that they will not fall. No hope while the ring lasts, said Frodo. Ah, the ring, said Boromir, his eyes lighting. And there he betrayed, he showed without wanting to show, his lust for the ring. The ring! Is it not a strange fate that we should suffer so much fear and doubt for so small a thing? So small a thing! And I have seen it only for an instant in the house of Elrond. Could I not have a sight of it again? And Frodo politely refused. It is best that it should lie hidden. As you wish, I care not, said Boromir. Yet may I not even speak of it? For you seem ever to think only of its power in the hands of the enemy, of its evil uses, not of its good. The world is changing, you say. Minas Tirith will fall if the ring lasts. But why? Certainly, if the ring were with the enemy. But why, if it were with us? And then Frodo answered, Were you not at the council? Meaning the council of Elrond. Because we cannot use it, and what is done with it turns to evil. And then Boromir showed clearly that he was tired of hearing the voice of wisdom in this matter. So you go on. Gandalf, Elrond, all these folk have taught you to say so. For themselves they may be right. These elves and half-elves and wizards, they would come to grief perhaps. Yet I often doubt if they are wise and not merely timid. But each to his own kind. True-hearted men, they will not be corrupted. We of Minas Tirith have been staunch through long years of trial. We do not desire the power of wizard lords. So he was basically lumping together Saruman and Gandalf, yet, as I showed in the previous video, Saruman, he had fallen into the lust for the ruling ring and into the lust for political power. Gandalf had not. Although Gandalf did admit in the chapter The Shadow of the Past that he was tempted to try to use the ring for good purposes, but he was wise enough to withstand the temptation. Only strength to defend ourselves, strength in a just cause, and behold, in our need, chance brings to light the ring of power. It is a gift, I say, a gift to the foes of Mordor. It is mad not to use it, to use the power of the enemy against him. The fearless, the ruthless, these alone will achieve victory. How big contrast to Aragorn, especially in his tender moments, and to Faramir, or with them. What could not a warrior do in this hour? A great leader. What could not Aragorn do? Or if he refuses, why not Boromir? The ring would give me power of command. How I would drive the hosts of Mordor, and all men would flock to my banner. And then he had this royal dream that he would defeat Mordor and become a mighty king. After Faramir had admitted that as a young boy, Boromir was greatly displeased by the fact that his father was not called a king, and then had asked Denethor how many years it would take for the steward to become a king if the king would not return. And then Denethor had said that even 10,000 years would not suffice in Gondor. And they tell us to throw it away, he cried. I do not say destroy it. That might be well if reason could show any hope of doing so. It does not. The only plan that is proposed to us is that a halfling should walk blindly into Mordor and offer the enemy every chance of recapturing it for himself. Folly. Then Frodo refused to come to Minas Tirith, although Boromir insisted. And then he still tried to persuade Frodo. You need rest before your venture, if go you must. And then here Boromir's hand trembled with suppressed excitement. And Frodo stepped quickly away. Why are you so unfriendly, said Boromir. I am a true man, neither thief nor tracker. I need your ring, that you know now, but I give you my word that I do not desire to keep it. Will you not at least let me make trial of my plan? Lend me the ring. And then Frodo refused. No, no, the council laid it upon me to bear it. It is by our own folly that the enemy will defeat us, cried Boromir. How it angers me, fool, obstinate fool, running wilfully to death and ruining our cause. If any mortals have claim to the ring, it is the men of Númenor and not halflings. So, kind of racial pride. Or should I say racist pride. It is not yours save by unhappy chance. It might have been mine. It should be mine. Give it to me. And then Frodo moved away without answering until the great flat stone stood between them. Then Boromir tried to calm himself down. Come, come, my friend. Why not get rid of it? Why not be free of your doubt and fear? You can lay the blame on me if you will. You can say that I was too strong and took it by force. For I am too strong for you, halfling, he shouted, and then he sprang over the stone and leaped at Frodo. A raging fire was in his eyes. Frodo dodged aside again and put the stone between them. And then Boromir sprang at him again, and he put the ring on his finger, and then started to seek Frodo. Miserable trickster, he shouted. Let me get my hands on you. Now I see your mind. You will take the ring to Sauron and sell us all. You have only waited your chance to leave us in the lurch. Curse you and all halflings to death and darkness. And then catching his foot on a stone, he fell sprawling and lay upon his face. Then, he was quiet, and then he wept. And then he shouted, What have I said? What have I done? Frodo, Frodo! Come back! Madness took me, but it has passed. Come back. And then he returned to the other companions, looking grim and sad. And then he said a partial version of the truth. Yes, I found him, meaning Frodo, some way up the hill, and I spoke to him. I urged him to come to Minas Tirith and not go east. I grew angry and he left me. He vanished. I have never seen such a thing happen before, though I have heard of it in tales. He must have put the ring on. I could not find him again. I thought he would return to you. And then Aragorn asked rather sternly, Is that all you have to say? Yes, Boromir answered. I will say no more yet. And then Sam dashed off. So did Merry and Pippin, Legolas and Gimli. And then Aragorn groaned. We shall all be scattered and lost. Boromir, I do not know what part you have played in this mischief, but help now. Go after those two young hobbits and guard them at the least, even if you cannot find Frodo. Come back to this spot if you find him or any traces of him. I shall return soon. But what did Faramir then say? He did pretend that he was after the ring. So that is the answer to all the riddles. The one ring that was thought to have perished from the world, and Boromir tried to take it by force, and you escaped, and ran all the way to me. And here in the wild I have you, 2 halflings and a host of men at my call, and the Ring of Rings. A pretty stroke of fortune, a chance for Faramir, captain of Gondor, to show his quality. Ha! He stood up very tall and stern, his grey eyes glinting, and then Frodo and Sam sprang to their feet, setting themselves side by side with their backs to the wall, fumbling for their sword hilts. But Faramir sat down again in his chair and started to laugh quietly, and then again became serious. Alas for Boromir! It was too sore a trial. How you have increased my sorrow, you 2 strange wanderers from a far country, bearing the peril of men! But you are less judges of men than I of halflings. We are truth speakers, we men of Gondor. We boast seldom, and then perform or die in the attempt. And then listen to this, these 2 sentences. Not if I found it on the highway would I take it, I said. Even if I were such a man as to desire this thing, and even though I knew not clearly what this thing was when I spoke, still I should take those words as a vow and be held by them. And then, but I am not such a man. Or I am wise enough to know that there are some perils from which a man must flee. Yes. Then old Gandalf, who had been restored to life on the top of Zirak Zigil, I think. Let's see. Yes. And of course we should briefly discuss Boromir's death. Shortly before his death, Boromir, who was mortally wounded, slowly confessed to Aragorn. I tried to take the ring from Frodo. I am sorry. I have paid. And then in his almost last words, he said, they have gone, the halflings. He meant, of course, Meriadoc and Peregrine. The orcs have taken them. I think they are not dead. Orcs bound them. Farewell, Aragorn. Go to Minas Tirith and save my people. I have failed. And then Aragorn assured, no, you have conquered. Few have gained such a victory. Be at peace. Minas Tirith shall not fall. Boromir smiled and then died. And then, well, of course, Aragorn did make a moral choice. He could have gone straight to, just about straight south to Minas Tirith. He could have crossed together with Legolas and Gimli, his 2 remaining companions, at that moment. He could have crossed with them the great river, Anduin, into its eastern shore, and then tried to find Frodo and Sam and joined them in the last part of the quest to destroy the ring. Then the third choice was to chase the orcs, who had already several hours lead, especially after the 3 companions, 3 remaining members at that moment of the Fellowship of the Ring, arranged Boromir's body in that one remaining boat with his enemy's swords and with his golden belt. That was to chase the orcs across Rohan. That they did. They never did catch the orcs, but they did meet then a group of Rohanian soldiers led by Eomer, one of the leaders of the Rohanian army. And then Eomer lent them 2 horses. Then they met Gandalf, eventually, in the Fangorn forest. And Aragorn told Gandalf of what had happened to Boromir. Gandalf replied quietly, "You have not said all that you know or guess, Aragorn, my friend. Poor Boromir! I could not see what happened to him. It was a sore trial for such a man, a warrior and a lord of men. Galadriel told me that he was in peril, but he escaped in the end. I am glad. It was not in vain that the young hobbits came with us, if only for Boromir's sake." And so forth. And one theme is that in this book that even outwardly small people, small by stature, and people who have little or no formal education, consider Samwise Gamgee, for example. Even Frodo was more learned than him, because Frodo even knew some bits and pieces of the Elven tongue, or actually Sindarin, I think. Well, either Sindarin or Quenya. Quenya being a kind of Elvish Latin. And this calls to mind a passage from the first epistle to the Corinthians, at least for the Christian readers or those who want to use the Bible as some kind of reference point. Of 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 26 to 31 according to the New King James Version. "For you see your calling, brethren, that not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. But God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things which are mighty, and the base things of the world, and the things which are despised God has chosen, and the things which are not, to bring to nothing the things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence. But of him you are in Christ Jesus, who became for us wisdom from God, and righteousness and sanctification and redemption, that, as it is written, he who glories, let him glory in the Lord." And then this the shadow of the past. Okay, here. The question of free will and predestination. Trying to find that passage. Okay. Yes. Let's see. Anyway, the ring had, shortly before Bilbo, apparently by chance, when he was lost from his companions, the 13 dwarves, and then Gandalf, while crossing the Misty Mountains, the ring had left Gollum, or originally Smeagol, who had held it for some 478 years. So this happened in the year 2941 of the Third Age of Middle-earth. "What, just in time to meet Bilbo?" said Frodo. "Wouldn't an orc have suited it better?" And then Gandalf rebuked him. "It is no laughing matter. Not for you. It was the strangest event in the whole history of the ring so far. Bilbo's arrival just at that time and putting his hand on it blindly in the dark. So now when its master, meaning Sauron, was awake once more and sending out his dark thought from Mirkwood, where he still had his stronghold, it abandoned Gollum, only to be picked up by the most unlikely person imaginable, Bilbo from the Shire. Behind that there was something else at work beyond any design of the ringmaker, meaning Sauron. I can put it no plainer than by saying that Bilbo was meant to find the ring, and not by its maker, in which case you were also meant to have it, and that may be an encouraging thought." Frodo replied, "It is not, though I am not sure that I understand you. But how have you learned all this about the ring and about Gollum? Do you really know it all, or are you just guessing still?" And then Gandalf went on to answer, "I knew much and I have learned much," and so forth. So here, of course, we come to this question of predestination, either by God or by some other supernatural being, or by fate, if we don't believe that things only happen by chance. And many religious people, including many professing Christians, have debated this question as to the extent to which we really have free will in our moral and especially spiritual choices, and have debated the extent to which we are predestined to a certain fate, especially after our physical death. And here perhaps there is an indirect allusion to some power, invisible power, unnamed power, who has ordained this, or at least allowed this to pass. In Tolkien's fantasy world, of course, it could be Ilúvatar or Eru the One, or then the Valar, his highest servants. And then in the same chapter, I'm soon going to end this, or I try to end this rather lengthy video quite soon. Then Frodo falls into the rather common temptation of, say, might have beens, regrets. "But this is terrible, far worse than the worst that I imagined from your hints and warnings. Oh, Gandalf, best of friends, what am I to do? For now I am really afraid. What am I to do? What a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had a chance." "Pity," Gandalf replied. "It was pity that stayed his hand, pity and mercy, not to strike without need. And he has been well rewarded, Frodo. Be sure that he took so little hurt from the evil and escaped in the end because he began his ownership of the ring so, with pity." "I'm sorry," said Frodo, "but I'm frightened, and I do not feel any pity for Gollum." And then Gandalf interrupted, "You have not seen him." "No, and I don't want to," said Frodo. "Now at any rate he is as bad as an orc, and just an enemy. He deserves death." And then a very moral passage. "Deserves it," Gandalf replied. "I dare say he does. Many that live deserve death. and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment, for even the very wise cannot see all ends. I have not much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there is a chance of it. And he is bound up with the fate of the ring. My heart tells me that he has some part to play yet, for good or ill, before the end, and when that comes, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many, yours not least. In any case, we did not kill him. He is very old and very wretched. The wood elves have him in prison, but they treat him with such kindness as they can find in their wise hearts. So here we come to the realm of, if we want to put it in Christian or other religious terms, prophecy. Although Gandalf did not say, thus says Eru or some other higher being, let alone thus says God or the Lord, Gandalf seemed to foresee that Gollum might actually in some way affect the outcome of that quest to destroy the ring, and he did. Gollum actually was the one who destroyed it, although he did not intend to, because when he was totally crazed by recovering his precious after over 77 years of losing it, he accidentally stepped too far on the edge of the cliff above the cracks of doom, and then fell together with Frodo's bitten off middle finger and the ring into the cracks of doom, and then both Gollum and of course Frodo's bitten off finger and the ring were destroyed, all of them. And then what about Sam, or Samwise? Just before Frodo succumbed to the lust for the ring, Sam had a chance to kill Gollum. But if that had happened, then Sauron would probably have recovered the ring, because I don't think that Sam could have persuaded Frodo to take off the ring and then to destroy it. So let's read this passage. Gollum had just attacked them and had tried to grab the ring from Frodo, but he had yet failed to do that. Let's see. Frodo had started slowly to walk up the path that would lead him to Samath Naur, or the Chambers of Fire. "Now," said Sam, "at last I can deal with you." He leaped forward with drawn blade, ready for battle, but Gollum did not spring. He fell flat upon the ground and whimpered. "Don't kill us," he wept. "Don't hurt us with nasty, cruel steel. Let us live less. Yes, live just a little longer. Lost, lost, we are lost. And when precious goes, we'll die, yes, die into the dust." He clawed up the ashes of the path with his long fleshless fingers. "Dust," he hissed. Sam's hand wavered. His mind was hot with wrath and the memory of evil. It would be just to slay this treacherous, murderous creature, just and many times deserved, and also, it seemed, the only safe thing to do. But deep in his heart there was something that restrained him. He could not strike this thing lying in the dust, forlorn, ruinous, utterly wretched. He himself, though only for a little while, had borne the ring, and now dimly he guessed the agony of Gollum's shriveled mind and body, enslaved to that ring, unable to find peace or relief ever in life again. But Sam had no words to express what he felt. "Oh, curse you, you stinking thing!" He said, "Go away, be off. I don't trust you, not as far as I could kick you, but be off, or I shall hurt you, yes, with nasty cruel steel." And then Sam aimed a kick at Gollum, who fled down the path. But then when Sam started to climb up the road, Gollum began to chase him with a wild light of madness glaring in his eyes. So both Bilbo and then even Frodo, because Frodo could have killed Gollum when Gollum at last caught him and Sam in Emin Muil near the eastern shore, or, well, roughly within still sight of the eastern shore of the Anduin. And then here's Sam. They all showed mercy. They all could have killed Gollum, but then, according to the storyline, likely Sauron would have recovered the ring from Frodo, because he had sent the Nazgul, the 8 remaining ring wraiths from the Battle of Morannon by the Black Gate, to intercept Frodo as quickly as possible in Orodruin, because Sauron had felt it when Frodo had declared the ring to be his own. His very dark tower Barad-dûr had trembled, and at last Sauron had discovered his enemy's plots and had become very angry, but at the same time he had become very afraid, because he knew that he was about to lose his power and his shape should the ring be destroyed, as it indeed then was, not by Frodo but inadvertently by Gollum. And then, well, maybe we could turn to the very... And then, of course, in the scouring of the Shire, Frodo again showed mercy to Saruman, even to Wormtongue. He was willing to let them both go away freely from the Shire. However, Wormtongue quickly killed Saruman by slitting his throat, and then before Frodo could do anything, I think Sam, Merry and Pippin shot Wormtongue dead. Wormtongue had, with a shriek, sprung down the lane in Hobbiton. Yes, so the Grey Havens were these fantasy book ends. Sam really had wanted Frodo to settle down back in the Shire and to enjoy for many years what the wonderful things that he had done. But Frodo, who kept periodically feeling pain, one was on the anniversary of his wounding by the Witch King, the chief of the Nazgul, October the 6th. The other one was March the 13th, the anniversary of his stinging in the neck by the monstrous spider-like creature Shelob in Cirith Ungol. Let's see. And then Frodo tried to comfort Sam. "Do not be too sad, Sam. You cannot be always torn in two. You will have to be one and whole for many years. You have so much to enjoy and to be and to do." Sam showed his deep love for Frodo in what he said in reply. "But," and he started to cry, "I thought you were going to enjoy the Shire too for years and years after all you have done." So Sam really epitomizes a person who has pity towards others, although he doesn't always show it by words. He can talk roughly, but at heart, Sam is a compassionate and merciful and unselfish person or individual, or in this case, hobbit. So I thought too once, but I have been too deeply hurt, Sam. I tried to save the Shire, and it has been saved, but not for me. So Frodo also showed unselfishness. It must often be so, Sam, when things are in danger, someone has to give them up, lose them, so that others may keep them. So, like one of the pillars of altruism or unselfishness. It can be interpreted in Christian and or other religious ways. It can be interpreted in more secular or even fully secular ethical or moral ways, or then purely personal ways, of course. But this is one of the most moral passages and probably one of the most religious passages of this book, depending, of course, on the reader's interpretations and moral and religious viewpoints or convictions. But you are my heir. All that I had and might have had I leave to you. And also you have Rose and Eleanor and Frodo lad will come, and Rosie lass and Merry and Goldilocks and Pippin, and perhaps more that I cannot see. Your hands and your wits will be needed everywhere. You will be the mayor, of course, as long as you want to be, and the most famous gardener in history, and you will read things out of the Red Book, which, by the way, Bilbo and Frodo had almost completed. The last leaves were for Sam. And keep alive the memory of the age that is gone, so that people will remember the great danger and so love their beloved land all the more. And that will keep you as busy and as happy as anyone can be, as long as your part of the story with a capital S goes on. And here, well, the story of individuals living, guided, well, in Tolkien's fantasy world, I suppose, by Eru or Ilúvatar, ultimately. Come now, ride with me. And then Elrond and Galadriel and many other elves were leaving the Middle-earth. And among them, filled with the sadness that was yet blessed and without bitterness, rode Sam and Frodo and Bilbo, and the elves delighted to honor them. And then eventually they arrived to the Grey Havens, to Mithlond, in the long firth or gulf or fjord of Lune, that river. And then Círdan, the shipwright, an old and bearded and very tall elf, came there. He looked at them and bowed and said, all is now ready. And then Gandalf was there with Shadowfax, and they both would also board the ship. And Gandalf openly wore the third ring of the elves, Narya the Great, while Elrond and Galadriel wore the other two rings. Then those who were to go were glad, for they knew that Gandalf also would take ship with them. But Sam was now sorrowful at heart, and it seemed to him that if the parting would be bitter, more grievous still would be the long road home alone. And then Merry and Pippin managed just in time to arrive by horse, or rather by ponies, to the Grey Havens. You tried to give us the slip once before and failed, Frodo, he said. And then Frodo had tried to secretly leave the Shire, after all. This time you have nearly succeeded, but you have failed again. It was not Sam, though, that gave you away this time, but Gandalf himself. And then Gandalf says words with which I think it is fitting to end this video. Of course, we could say that Sam, Merry, and Pippin comforted each other, although they didn't speak to each other until they came back to the Shire. Yes, For it will be better to ride back 3 together than 1 alone. Well, here at last, dear friends, on the shores of the sea comes the end of our fellowship in Middle-earth. Go in peace. I will not say do not weep, for not all tears are an evil.